Hey, what's going on, everybody? Boilon here, and we have a very special video today with our favorite guest back on the show, Gangsta KT, here to talk about level 100, best characters to level up, and we're also going to talk about the stat increases for level 100 as well. How's it going, Gangsta?
Yeah, it's going great, Boilon. Thanks, as always, for having me. Excited to be back here, and I'm really looking forward to this level 100. Glad it's here, even though it's going to be a little while before I can start leveling. But nice to have a different change in the game right now, different way to use resources, and excited to talk through this today.
How's your 96 progress? Are you further ahead than I am, or about the same?
Uh, it looks like about the
Eh,
same. Been doing some 50 core refreshes yesterday, but still kind of figuring out
yeah.
my overall plan for it right now.
It sounds good. So we're also going to have some timestamps in the description down below. Video might get, to the usual 25, 30 minutes that we usually do here. And so if people want to skip to a specific origin to talk about, then you can do that as well. But otherwise, we're going to get started here. So if you're ready to go, let's boil this down. And I just want to cover this table really quickly. We talked about this, before the video and whatnot, as far as the changes go for level 96 through 100, the stat growth for that, and kind of depending on if you have high stars and low stars. Were you a little bit surprised by this? Actually, I want to just really quick. Sorry, I shouldn't have got ahead of myself. So for 7-7, basically, you're looking at a 21% stat increase from 96 to 100, and then 16% for if they're about 4-4. So I used Nightcrawler as an example down here, and then Super Scroll up here, even though, yes, I know 7 Red isn't out for Super Scroll, but I did it anyways. So do you find like anywhere from 16 to 21%, do you find that surprising, or is that normal? We didn't get a huge jump on like a focus stat. Like that's kind of what I was expecting, like one stat to get a huge bump, but it's pretty even across the board.
Yeah, I think I was curious if there were any like inflection points, like you said, level 97, you get a huge focus bump.
Mhm.
Not too surprised. I was expecting it to be a little bit higher. With how I know we'll talk about how powerful the T18 increase is specifically. This doesn't hit those same levels. But it's fairly similar to 90 to 95, and I think that's 20%, 21%. That's well
Yeah.
worth investing in. That's a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a huge stat change nonetheless, and especially when you're talking about in a PvP context like Crucible, where even 20% on a good team, right, is 20% you didn't have before, right? So that could make a pretty big difference when it comes to winning a match, or your defense picking up, some extra points, for example, as well. So a lot of this list that we're going to be taking a look at for the best characters to level in the origin is going to kind of keep that in mind, because I want to think about like when you're leveling these characters, whether it's to 98, if you're free to play, that's kind of the magic level that I kind of said for if you want to do race to the top, that you're not going to get much more than 98, and so that's kind of the context here. But as you're leveling up, keeping in mind that you're getting roughly anywhere from a 3 to a 4% stat boost per level. So, in which order you want to do this in, I guess, will depend on what game mode I think matters most to you, as how we're going to approach this one. So, we're going to start things off here. I'm going to, how we're going to do this is I got on the screen here, they were starting with bio, and I'm going to slowly unveil the list. I'll put it towards the middle so people can see a little bit better. And as we go along. So let's start with yours because this is in no particular order. These are just what we feel are the best 10, sometimes there's 11 characters on this list. And I want to hear from you about I knew you were going to put this on here because you mentioned him in a previous video as well. Zombie Juggernaut, Nova, and Photon, I think was yours.
Yeah,
Maybe Tiger as
yeah,
well. We can
absolutely.
talk about Tiger too.
Absolutely, and agree with the ones you have on here too. The first thing that stood out to me, Bio's come a long way. I was kind of used to Bio being, one of the worst origins, and there was a lot of good tunes in Bio now, especially with
Mhm.
the new raid team. So to your point, I love Zombie Juggernaut, and this is the only way I can make him bigger. I can't get more stars on him right now, so extremely excited to level him up to 100, and he's one of the earlier tunes I'll be doing. Definitely one of my first ones. Photon, I think with the value of Secret Defenders and especially the value of Photon in War, I think she's definitely worth including on the list. She's not going to be first for me. So by the time I get there, we'll see if I actually pull the trigger. But she was obviously in my top 10. And then I know maybe not your favorite character, but Nova is still really valuable in War, and I am still using him in Crucible daily. So that was kind of my bar for making this list, and he is there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question about Nova is for when you use them in Crucible, would those levels do you think actually make a big enough impact to justify the gold? Is because like I don't have as much experience using him. So a lot of people say like for Kang, for example, who's on the list, of course, like making him bigger is gonna just make him kill faster. And I guess Nova's damage stats I don't think is high for that to be a huge factor.
Yeah, I think his alt does quite a bit of damage, especially if you can get the Korg special off where he has offense up first before it. So it will help there, but your point's valid. I don't think he gets the same value from that incremental damage like an Icarus gets
Yeah.
or Kang gets. It's maybe not as critical for the match, but Nowhere as a whole really got a lot better when they got bigger. So I think he is still worth building up if you have the resources.
Now, the one thing I want to ask you about is so we both had Red Hulk, I'm pretty sure, and I want to talk about Gamma in Crucible because you're still seeing them. I think people are just putting them on defense because there's nothing better to do. In fact, I have them. Well, you can kind of see in the back here. There's a Gamma in my Crucible trial too, and would so is it just Red Hulk that you would kind of take to level 100, or what about the rest of the team? Like probably not because they're not on here, but is this an Infinity Watch Darkhold defense, or do you think it's going to drop off pretty fast as far as like the next best team is going to kick, Gamma off the defense kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I do still have them on my defense. I do not have anyone besides Red Hawk on the list, as you mentioned
Mhm.
here. I think they're going to be one of the next ones to drop off, maybe even before Infinity Watch. We'll see on that. But I do occasionally still get wins, even though New Warriors is such an obvious counter. It keeps them from using New Warriors elsewhere, and occasionally I'll get a surprising win in that room.
Yeah.
But I think Red Hawk specifically is worth it, and we'll have a lot of plug and play use even once the Gamma team has been power crept and out of the meta.
Yeah, I think they're so you can't see it because my tier list is kind of blocking the way. But I have like a 1.5 million Gamma team right now for me on defense, and 20% across the board would be like 1.8 million. So I'm just like, would that make a difference? In terms of me winning or getting more, efficiency points? Like Red Hulk is, I would say fairly. I also took him to G18 because of Kiln. So now I feel like I kind of have to take him to 100 because then like, okay, he's G18, I might as well take him to 100. And I feel like a lot of these characters are kind of like that too. Like a lot of the ones that are going to be on my side of the list are ones that I have at G18. And so I feel like it feels fine to take them to the 100 because they're already pretty high. Like they're pretty max. So I might as well just go the extra way, right? Or Dark Dimensions 7 future reasons as well.
And whatever rationale you had to spend G18 resources on them,
Mhm.
probably applies to putting more power in them with level 100.
Yeah. I will say really quickly that the Hive Mind are on the list, mainly because while we don't have the new raids and the new difficulties yet, I think very much we're going to fall into a similar situation with Extreme X-Men where you're probably going to need to build them big, whether that means level 100 or extra gear tiers or whatever. I think that you should probably go in with this assumption that you're going to have to do that. They're bringing in more ways for us to get alien spores. So, take that for what it's worth, and you might need to use some of that on your Hive Mind too.
Yeah,
And Skrull's a no-brainer. So,
Yeah, Scroll's an obvious no-brainer. And the one last thing I wanted to say about Bio, we did a video a little while ago, with the top characters level to 100, and I said I had 21. Most of these Bio characters were on that list. So some of the other origins, we picked our top 10,
mhm,
probably with no plans to actually level all 10. But these
yeah.
Bio tunes are good characters and are the ones I'm looking at leveling pretty early.
I think, yeah, I mean, with the exception of Zombie Juggernaut because he's a level 1 for me, but I do plan on putting a lot of these other ones though. I would say close to 100. I think I will do at some point. So it's the skill. We'll get to the skill part. I think some of these were just like obligatory picks that we just like didn't
Yep.
care too much about. So we'll get to there. That'll probably be a shorter section. So otherwise, Tigra. Actually, let's talk quickly about Tigra because I know you love Tigra. So let's give a quick nod to Tigra. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the very respectful nod to Tiger there. I always kind of have a pet character, one I'm in love with at the time, and she's the one right now. I did get her to 1 diamond finally once I got 7 stars on her, and she's just crushing it at T18 and 1 diamond. I mean, her damage, her survivability is unbelievable. Really enables that team. So big Tiger fan here.
I think her bleed damages are pretty crazy too. Like, if you ever built, like, I don't have her at 7 star yet, but I'm actually very much looking forward to it because I do have her at G18. So we'll see what kind of damage numbers she can put out.
Yeah, I haven't been able to test it yet, but if you can get a few chains on the same character from her
Yeah.
special, she can probably one shot people at the start of match with those bleeds. They're
Dead,
incredible.
dead, dead. Looking forward to that. So let's move on past bio. We're going to move into Mutant. I'm just going to kind of Scroll down there. Oh, we can see some of the skill characters. Don't look. Okay,
Spoiler alert.
there's Mutant. So this is the Mutant picks. Some of these are again mine. Some of these are yours as well. We'll start with. I mean, I think we largely had the same, honestly. But let's talk about Omega Red and Firestar. Firestar wasn't actually on mine, but I'll let you talk about. I mean, we because you don't have any other new warriors on the list. So why Firestar?
Yeah, so Firestar, I think, still kind of understanding how powerful she actually is, and really, with a lot of the normal counters we use that team for, she's the enabler. That ult she has with the trauma, with all the bleeds that you can then spread with Death Pool is so valuable. So I think as enemies start getting up to level 100, making sure that it's such a reliable Crucible counter, and she's the one to put the power in on that team.
Yeah.
So maybe some others as well, but it was really a nod to how valuable that team is in Crucible and her being the key member there, in my opinion.
She does have a pretty high damage stat, and it's possible, like, if other people are starting to level up their Gamma characters, that maybe leveling up Firestar might be an okay kind of counterbalance as well to kind of like push that team up a little bit higher, so you could still do that counter, I suppose, just as easy.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of, keeping up with as the enemies go up to 100, where do you need a little more power? And we'll learn that as we go. I will say, not one I'm really planning on taking to 100 quickly or right off the bat, kind of more, rounding out the end of the top 10 for this origin. But I do think she's worth considering, really valuable member of that team.
Omega Red, is that mostly because most of us, a lot of us took it to G18 for Dark Dimension 6, and you're just pushing them higher, or was there another reason?
Yeah, I'd say your first part's part of it. I'm big into war and definitely still use Weapon X in war all the time with the speed gains they get in there. They're still really valuable. And when I T18'd him for DD6, just remembered how good he is. Those extra stats like made him just that much more powerful again. So I'm still using him in Crucible almost every match, using him in more every match. So again, kind of rounded out the top 10 here, but one that I am considering.
It is kind of surprising how he's kind of held up. I think it's because he has a lot of hit points, like, so he does survive quite well. And his kit is largely on a bit of a lower cooldown, I think. Like, even in places like Dark Dimension, like his specials on like was it 3 or 4? I think it's
Yeah,
4,
3 turns.
or whatever. But so it's pretty low compared to like Nova, for example, who has a lot higher as a war legendary. His cooldowns are very high, so that's why I didn't like him in Dark Dimension 6. But that's just that's another thing.
I agree. I thought Omega Red did better in DD6 than Nova did, and that
Yeah.
shocked me. And I think his percent damage on a lot of his attacks is part of that too. That's kind of
The
power creep.
striker basic, basically, that does the percent damage.
Yep.
It's crazy, and it's just another, honestly, it's another nod to why, like, I think that Nova should have been a lot better, because if Omega Red's still keeping up, like, I don't know how many years it's been now, but like, he is probably the one character that is still doing fairly well for himself, which is a
Yeah.
little surprising.
But I think too the ones you have on the left that I know are your choices. I don't
Yeah.
think he's one to do first here. I think some of these others are definitely more important.
Yeah, so we do have 4 out of 5 Extreme X-Men. We don't have Cyclops, unfortunately, but we do have the other ones. And I think this is a really great team. I think this is a really good team in Crucible. You're seeing a very common now for those people who do have them built up quite high. You're starting to see whether it's a 4-piece or 5-piece Extreme X-Men, often with Rogue, sometimes without. But you're seeing it all over the place. And so I think this is a team that's very solid, even outside of raids. And I think that they're worth those levels. Now, I'd probably put it into probably Gambit and Nightcrawler first before the others, but still, I think they're all deserving of it. You think so?
Completely agree. I think Nightcrawler maybe still figuring this out, but I almost feel like he's on a Kestrel Kang. It's maybe a slight exaggeration, but he is a meta character and one of the first ones you want to take there.
Yeah.
But I do agree with the whole team with their use in Crucible right now. It's worth building them.
And people, a lot of people, like, especially in the free to play realm, are 4/4s, with a lot of these characters. And I can't even imagine, like, when they're farmable and they're 7/7. It's kind of that new Avengers thing that we were talking about, like, as they became farmable. It's like, I wonder, like, how big or how powerful the Extreme X-Men are going to get when they're 7/7 across the board, or even with diamonds, when people have them more.
Yeah, it'll be scary. But
So
at the same time, we'll also learn better counters or little
yeah,
tricks to take care of them. But well worth building. I think they're no brainers for this discussion.
I think they're doing a lot better as far as raid teams go outside of raids. That might have started with Pegasus, but Extreme X-Men I think are very good as well. So looking forward to building. Well, I guess I can't really build them much bigger because I have them at G18, but putting those levels on them. Apocalypse is going to be in the same. I'm not going to talk about it much. Like, that's Skrull, right? There's no brainer. We don't need to talk about that. He needs the levels. Rogue and Miss Marvel Hardlight. Let's talk about them because they're tanks, right? So is that just beefier? It'll take longer to kill them. That's the main argument there.
Yeah, I think Miss Marvel Hardlight, she's kind of known as potentially a way to get by Apocalypse, and just getting more power on her, more hit points on her will help try and ensure that Apocalypse's empowered basic won't wipe her.
True.
So
Yeah.
I think she's definitely worth it. Still being used in arena, meta in every game mode. So she's well worth it. Rogue, I feel is more towards the bottom of the list. Has some use right now, but Unlimited's kind of falling off and being replaced by this new Extreme X-Men team with Gambit on both of them. So see some plug and play viability with her long term. She's a great character, but she's lower on this list for me.
Yeah, so I don't know if Archangel was actually on mine because I did have him on the right side here. I think he was on yours, and I'm actually very reluctant to want to level him up. Mostly because they get wiped out very easy in Crucible defense. I don't know if I'm going to be using them, and I'm not using them in raids anymore. So I just don't know where I'll be using Death as much going forward, and I don't know if they're worth the gold anymore. But what's your thoughts on that, or do you just think he's kind of towards the end as well?
Yeah, I really agree with you. And again, it was a struggle some of these origins to pick 10, knowing I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
no plans to really level him up. So he's nowhere close to my priority. I think he's worth considering that, giving energy, reducing speed by 10%, it's going to have value in places down the road, but it's going to be limited.
Yeah.
And he's not meta like he used to be.
So it's pretty safe to say then, I think that we can agree then probably the priorities would be Apocalypse, Extreme X-Men, Miss Marvel, and maybe Rogue. Like basically this side. This 7 kind of, and then this is extra.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
Not in order because I think Apocalypse would be
Yeah,
first,
yeah, of
and
course.
Nightcrawler second. But yeah, I agree with what you said there, and those are
Yeah.
really who I plan on focusing on.
Yeah. I mean, I want people to know as well, the 10 is only relevant if you want to max out the race to the top per level. It's basically 10 characters for each origin trait per level. So that's largely the reason why we're doing this, but we're not necessarily saying that everyone needs to go out and level these 10 characters. It's just that we came up with 10 for you guys to decide, what you wanted to do. So let's move on to skill. This is going to be interesting. It could be quick. We'll see. Maybe some of these were more obligatory picks as well that we kind of didn't feel great about, but we had to do this anyways for the video. So let's talk about the ones that probably are definitely on the list, which for me is going to be Kestrel, Black Cat, and Craven. I think those are the top 3 of all of these that probably deserve them first. Can we agree on that at least, maybe?
I think we could
Best
agree and
value?
probably even agree that you might be able to stop there, if we
Yeah.
were obliged to pick
Yeah.
10.
So I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like some of this we were kind of forced to do. But as far as the other characters go, I mean, there's a lot of people who still like building up Infinity Watch, which is why I put Gamora on there, because as far as damage goes, that's where you're getting it from. So that's all I'll say there. As far as the new Avengers, they're all, well, sorry, Tiger's Bio. I forgot. We already talked about her, but Ronan and Mockingbird. So they're farmable recently. I don't think they're as good as Tiger though. Like I think Tiger's like she does a lot on that team. Like I don't know if Ronan and Mockingbird being a hunter is going to make a significant difference to the damage outcome of the team. I think it's Tiger honestly. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Ronin's special does a ton of damage, and more power will help. But
Yeah.
I do plan they'd be probably my fourth and fifth on this list after the 3 we mentioned, but only
Mhm.
because of my love for war. I'm using them in Crucible right now, but not sure how long that'll last long
And,
term. So
and
they're more nice to haves.
and a lot of the rest of this is kind of like it's kind of war too. Star Lord Annihilation, Nakia, Taskmaster, Nick Fury, well, to some degree, Black Widow. Maybe if you're getting into the invader section of the current raids, which most people aren't. I don't think there's a lot of people getting, especially if you're in Incursion 2, I don't think a lot of people are getting into past 80%. But Nick Fury, I guess, will help you there. Like his minions will get more powerful and things like that, right? But other than that, like I don't think any of us had the other Invaders characters on this list because we know that they're probably soon to get thrown away, right?
On
In
their
the
way out. Yep.
next probably month or two. So
Yeah, and I think one thing to highlight real quick, Nakia and Taskmaster are kind of the same, where they're unique on teams where they're almost 75% of the importance of the whole team. Like if you have a huge Nakia, a huge Taskmaster, that team can do so much with the other characters smaller. So
yeah.
to kind of lengthen their lifespan in war, and they're both still really good in war. I do think those two are worth considering because of how much it enables that whole team.
I think it's kind of like the Gamora argument too, where like she's a lot of the damage on the team. So Taskmaster, because I do have Underworld built a bit. mostly in Taskmaster and Mr. Negative a little bit as well. But Taskmaster's like you said, he's like 80 or 9, maybe even 90. Honestly, he's most of the damage, the spam assists. So you could probably get some extra value out of the team by only leveling Taskmaster, and that'll get you a little bit more out of him. I'm not super experienced with War Dogs. I completely skipped this, so I can't really comment much on Nakia, and I'm not going to. But I'll take your word for it that she does the bulk of the damage of the team.
Yeah, her passive ping does huge damage, and a lot of their counters. It's critical that you get that enemy down within a certain number of pings before they can do something. And so, knowing they'll get bigger, if you want to be able to keep using War Dogs,
Yeah.
making sure she gets bigger to match that. But I think it's a niche pick, and only people really into War.
Let's put a disclaimer here and say that if you don't care about those things, just focus on probably these three, I
Yeah,
guess.
agreed. Agreed.
And then if you care about the other things, then you can consider some of these here too. But otherwise, the best characters really are just these three here, I think, that are like kind of very meta relevant right now. All right, that's skill. Moving on to Mystic. This one does have some, I don't know if it's super controversial, but I'll talk about mine first. I have Wong on here, and a lot of the reasons why I have Wong is for the same reason people level up like Gamora and other characters in Infinity Watch. I feel that, he's the tank. If people get stuck behind Wong and he's bigger, then he's gonna get more points. Gonna get a couple more efficiency points, maybe on Crucible defense, something like that. Kind of my main argument there. It's like the Miss Marvel Hardlight kind of argument. Otherwise, I think I don't know. So you had Vol. I was a bit curious about Vol. The reason why, we'll talk about Vol right here first, because I believe that Mystic is going to be the next one out after Skill, and so I don't actually use Vol a lot in Crucible. I don't think I use her anywhere. In fact, she's not on my defense, and I don't know if I have a space for her on my offense. I think they suck in War. So yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts about? It's weird. Like, she has exposed, right? So she's got some value. They've got some value. Sorry, but I don't know. I don't know.
So you said a key term there. You exposed it, Boilon.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
big part of my rationale for having her here. I also think she's the biggest stats in the game, so being able to take her to 100 will only magnify that more. And
Yep.
and I am using her in most Crucible matches, although not all of them. But I do see there being value with like an exposed team potentially down the road. To where I think I do plan on taking her to 100 because of how big her stats are. Because I am still using her almost daily.
Yep.
And with that exposed mechanic being so unique.
So because you had Hela on your list, so do you have Hela at 95 right now?
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's actually a great point. My starting point for this was, who do I have at 95? Because if I haven't taken them there with how much gold I have right now, like, they have no business
Yeah.
going to 100. So everyone on here I do have at 95 that was pulled from my list.
That's probably something I honestly should have said towards the beginning, is that if you do care about the race to the top milestone, you should probably not level up characters that are level 1, which in this instance, maybe Void Knight or Gwenom for you. I would focus on the other characters that you only need to go from 95 plus, because otherwise you're spending a lot more gold to have to get there. So do keep that in mind as well. I know that you have Zombie Juggernaut, so it makes sense, obviously, that Hell is on this list for you too. Which made me, I guess you didn't have Zombie Iron Man on the bio section. I guess would he have been like an 11 or 12 or something, maybe? Or do you not level him up?
No, and I use him to where it'd warrant that type of rating, but it's because the power on him just isn't as critical. It's nice, but out of those three, Zuggs is really the one that needs the power. Hella's kind of in the middle, half kit, half power, and Zim's almost all kit based. So
Yep.
great character, still use him, but just don't get the value out of extra power there as much.
I think a lot of the rest of them is honestly pretty reasonable to put on here. Ghost Rider Robbie, great meta character. Quicksilver, great meta character. Some of these I honestly don't think need much explanation, because they're used in a lot of the places in the game. Spider Weaver still being used. Dormammu, I think maybe we have it on here because of Mythic, the Mythic tag, which I don't know if we've really talked much about. And maybe Doom's on here for that too, because of the future Dark Dimension 7 needing level 100 gear 19 on Mythic tag characters. Is that why it's probably included on here too as well? Or
Yeah, for me, they're lower on the list of 10. I am using Dormammu a lot. I actually bought a 7th red star on him recently still,
Oh, wow.
and finding a lot of value out of Dormammu. So he's a little different than Doom for me, who I'm also still using, but they are lower on the list for me. The Mythic section is a big part of that, and knowing we'll need him for 100 for DD7.
Yeah. I don't know if Morgan Le Fay was probably on yours. For me, it's the same reason why Wong's on my list. It's just like having a bigger Darkhold, better Crucible outcomes, I suppose, defense points as well. She's still a pretty good character. Like, honestly, if people are saying, build Infinity Watch bigger, then you should probably do Darkhold first because they're also the more recent meta arena team that should still hold up longer than Infinity Watch, in my opinion. So if anyone makes that argument, then you should be leveling up your Darkhold. As far as the Eternals go, I think we've been talking about Icarus a lot. Because the bigger he is, the easier it is for him to kill somebody and therefore get the the double tap. Right? That's kind of the main argument there.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, and I know I've mentioned this not to keep bragging about it,
Mm.
but did get a very lucky 3 diamond pull on him, and was using him all over the place before, but more power in him I think is almost more impactful than on any other character, and definitely brought him right back into the meta. So I think Cersei's a little different. She's the also ran there, and you don't get that much value with the power, although it will make her more survivable. So she's at the end of the list. But
Mm.
Icarus is towards the top. I think he's still great.
I'm just waiting for like a third Eternals to come out just to skyrocket this team like back into the meta again. Like it's not that they're not meta, it's just that they're kind of they might be on the edges, I suppose, but they're still quite valuable. I think that everyone should have them because they're only two characters and they can do the
Yeah.
job of a full team with two people. That's how I
Yeah.
feel about them. So it doesn't cost as much, to bring them up versus like a full other team. So that's why I like the value of them. And it actually makes me want to have more like kind of like duos, strong duos or trios, that kind of thing. I kind of miss that in a weird way.
Yeah, it's fun and nice thinking what the future potential could be with that, but you're right, just so much value out of that investment with those 2.
All right, let's move on from Mystic into Tech. This is the final origin that we'll be talking about here today. And let's get started with your picks because I was like, okay, let's talk about Ultron. I think we touched on this a little bit with the mythic trait. What was that your only reasoning for that, or
Yeah, I'll say the only reasoning. And I could try making up an excuse that I occasionally still use him in Crucible, but he's expensive to level up. It's just that lookout that Ghost Rider Robbie, Dormammu, and Doom all take the same unique piece. Which when T19 comes out, we aren't going to have any to start with,
that's
and
true?
so worried that if I really want to push for Mephisto, which I'm hoping to be able to do, that I'll need to have a sacrifice there out of those 3, and plan on substituting Ultron for Doom if that still plays out that way.
Yeah, I mean, he does use a unique that no, we're not really using in the meta right now, which is adamantium. I think it's pretty safe as far as the unique goes. He is quite expensive to build, and that was my only other issue. That being said, Doc Ock is also expensive now. I think he's 5 pieces, I believe, as well, or 4, or he's a lot. Anyways, Doc Ock was
Yeah.
quite expensive. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Spider Slayer, I still haven't really built him up to like the max level yet. So like he's still sitting at, I'm not really using him in my Crucible right now because I haven't got around to him. But what kind of value have you gotten out of Spider Slayer versus not using Spider Slayer in your Sinister Six or lineup?
Yeah, it's minimal. I am using him every match, no question somewhere, especially with those Crucible rules right now, and being able to plug one Superior 6 into a match to kind of cheese getting rid of revives. But I think putting Vulture in there, putting Mysterio in there, they're all somewhat interchangeable, and depending on the counter, have different values. So not someone that's at the top of my list, but just a nod to how good that team is and how valuable it is, in one of the meta teams right now.
Yeah.
With Doc Ock, one other comment there. Somehow I feel like Doc Ock is really underrated, and I don't know why, but obviously everyone's talking about Green Goblin, and he's the best on the team. And Lizard's really good. All that team's really good, but people seem to not put Doc Ock high enough, in my
Hey,
opinion. And
hey,
I found the really tough matches. He's the difference maker for
I
me.
got I got two I got 2 diamonds for Doc Ock down here, and you'd be surprised like how much damage when you're able. Maybe in Crucible it's not as big of a deal, but when you're able to use him in other game modes, whether it's War or Dark Dimension, and he busts out Shocker, and Shocker actually does a decent amount of damage as a summon. Now with the Doc Ock rework, so I think while it's not a huge priority to like, I wouldn't I bought diamonds, but that's just because I love Sinister Six. But I wouldn't recommend this for everyone. I still think that there's some decent value. And I'm going to say the exact same thing about Mysterio because his minions actually are quite beefy. And so having him built a little bit higher, I think is really great. And I think for level 100, this is a good alternative to putting gear into him because he's quite expensive to build. He is a lot, like 5 pieces, right? He's a lot. And so a lot of people won't do that right away. But you could get some value, like that 20% mark, because you're going to have 7/7 on Mysterio by putting the XP into him instead. I think could have a good alternative to that. And I love Mysterio. I think the rework was great. I think it's
It's
great.
amazing. It's such a cool team, Sinister Six, right now with so much flexibility, and I think a team definitely worth taking with you into the next level 100 meta.
Yeah, I love
So
Sinister Six. Best patch. I think it was the best patch. And then we have Ultron here. So a lot of similar reasons. Sinister Six is a great team. They're very flexible. Arguably 6 or 7 characters, not really 5, but there's still a lot of value across the board in all the game modes. I think with this team. Green Goblin. I don't think I need to explain why he's great. Most of these characters are great because they're just very meta. I don't need to go into too much detail. Kang, he's still hanging in there. Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna have him for a little while. I think
he's
that's
not
another.
bad. Might have a place on
I
your
didn't say
roster.
that.
So
When I said that, it may have sounded like he's bad and falling out of the meta. He's not, but he's usually the one character I think on Masters of Evil that you're pushing up to like the biggest heights. Like I stopped leveling up Titania and Moonstone and things like that. I just push it all into Kang and then hope for the best.
yep, their best character in the game right
Yeah.
now, probably. Arguably maybe him and Kestrel third and fourth. But he's unbelievable. You want to level him up as quickly as possible.
I mean, he's like he's like the bulk of the damage, right? Like pretty much. The others are just kind of control characters, I guess, for debuffs and things like that. But Kang's like the majority of the damage, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely, and so useful even outside of the team. I mean, more Crucible. He's got a place anywhere he wants. He's unbelievable.
yeah, and so I added in the Pegasus characters in here as well. I mostly did that because I think there's a small question mark. I think, and we'll probably hear more before Race to the Top is finished about what's the future of the raids. Whether that's incursion 2 difficulties, I don't know if they're just going to jump straight to an incursion 3 or if they're going to add incursion 2 difficulties. I heard that they were going to add at least 3 difficulties, but as always, my button's actually here, subject to change. You never know what's going to go on with this game, but I think you might have to build these guys up higher because there is, for those of you who are simming right now, probably have run into a wipe every now and then on sim. I know that some people do manual and some people do sim, but I've died before. So you might need to consider this, especially when the new difficulties or whatever's next does come out. So that's kind of why they're on there for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're probably a little higher on still pushing them to 100 than what I am. I think out of that team, obviously Kestrel, but she's not.
She
Well,
was in
she is
skill.
tech, I guess.
Yeah.
Not on this list, but she
She is
is
more
tech.
important. Yeah, of course.
But then Iron Man Infinity War is really the second one that I'd recommend focusing power on there. If you need the other ones higher to get through the raids, obviously that's a great investment. But they're at the bottom of my top 10 list for tech.
The one of the things I do want to mention about specifically Iron Man Infinity War, and that's probably what I just said about Mysterio is, once I find this damn tag, is because Iron Man is an osmium character, and I'm still sitting at G15. And so the
Me too.
only way for me to get more power is by putting XP into him, by taking him to 100. He's 95. So if I want to get some extra stats on him, I can do that by putting into 100 because I don't have the osmium that I can put into him, and frankly, I don't really want to either. So I think 100 it can be a good alternative to the gear, while not a complete replacement, but it can add some extra stats and value, so you don't have to do this basically if you don't want to.
That's a great point, and my Iron Man is T15 for the exact same reason.
And so that is going to cover it for all 5 origins. You probably already saw that there were timestamps in the description down below. One last thing before we go, though. Are you going to be spending your cores on refreshing the store when Osmium goes out on Thursday or Wednesday or whenever it goes?
So I would say possibly. I do have
Sorry,
every
not Osmium. Did I say Osmium?
character.
I meant Alien Spores. Did I say Alien
Oh,
Spores? I forgot what I said. Anyways,
you did say
the 7
Osmium.
days of Alien Spores. That's what I meant.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So, probably. I sure plan on doing it. I know I was refreshing the last event store just for that random chance of osmium. So, if this is a much higher chance of getting value with that refresh,
Yeah.
I think it's worth doing. So, balancing that with using cores for more quick leveling, But right now, some of these T16 pieces are a ridiculous bottleneck, and I think that does need to be priority for cores.
Yeah, I mean, I still need a lot of alien spores. You know, I need to finish Void Knight. I'm going to need to do Carnage, and we have no idea whether or not Red Goblin is going to be alien spores. So I don't know. I still need like another 100. So I will be probably coring at least once per refresh, which might be 150 cores daily just to alien spores, just to pick up some more of them because I'm going to need a lot for my bio raid team. So I just wanted to see what you're up to.
Yeah, and Boyan, if you don't mind, one quick question before we end. So we just went through, 52 characters on that list. At a high level, what's your overall plan to approach this? Are you going to level up all 50 of those, or how are you planning on looking at this?
So, I mean, I think everyone needs to decide where you're going to try to get to for Race to the Top. I did put out a video for this as well, basically outlining an estimation of how much gold that you would need to spend. For 98, for example, you're looking at I think 3-ish million for that per character, and you need to level 50 characters to 98 to get to the 1 diamond sunspot. That's a lot. That's like 170 million gold, something like that, that I did the math on. So if you don't think that you're going to be able to have that gold, then this is not a priority for you. I don't think I will because I did not save enough gold before the level cap happened. So I might end up, aiming for this milestone 10, which is going to be, I don't know, in the realm of 70 million gold for me to spend. So in that instance, some of the characters that we covered will go to 98, but the ones that are towards the back of the list, probably not. So, I'll focus on the ones that are the higher priority for me. And I want to make clear, in case people don't know, on my channel, I do prioritize raids, although I hope that the difficulties come out soon. So there's a reason why I need to do that more. But it usually goes arena, raids, crucible, and then war last for me. But I know that everyone's, what you like in the game, it might be different. So, do what gives you enjoyment, I think, personally, from a player perspective, because you want to keep playing the game, right? So whatever you find the most value out of.
Absolutely. Nope, appreciate it. Good input there.
Yeah, so that's going to be the end of our video. It was about 35 minutes or so. Not too bad, but there's timestamps. For those of you who did make it to the end, though, thank you all for watching. And thank you, Gangster, for coming on the show to talk about this with me.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for having me as always. I enjoyed this, Boilon.
And of course, for everyone else, if you haven't checked out Gangsta KT's channel, then his links are going to be in the description down below. So from both of us here, I'll do my stay safe and healthy, and I'll see y'all later. Boilon and Gangsta KT signing out.